On today's show, the Cavs got to get tougher this offseason, and that might mean breaking up the core four. We'll discuss all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDON NBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. As we've been discussing all week, the Cavs failed this postseason, and there's not a nice way to say it, but I do think because of what this failure was for them, it is fair to question everything about this roster, almost everything about this roster. I do not believe that there should be any questions about Donovan Mitchell. I think it's unfair to question Evan Mobley. And that's kind of where it stops. I think everything else on this roster can and should be questioned. That doesn't mean everything else on this roster needs to be changed. Like, I am somebody who, I will come out and say this, I am still a believer in Darius Garland as a playoff performer. I think that toe injury he's dealing with was rather significant. I do not think that this Pacers series is something that when you look at his performance and you look at the future of the Cavs, I don't think that you look at this series and say, that guy's not a winner. I don't think you do that with him. He still needs to prove that he is those things, but I don't think that you just dismiss him because he was injured during this series. But I think it's fair to ask questions about everybody other than the two guys I mentioned. And that leads to kind of, I think, the question that is going to shape this offseason, and one that I'm sure between now and the middle of July, we will be talking about a lot on this show. And it's one that we talked about a little bit last year, right when I first started here on Locked On Cavs, and whether or not the core four should move forward. Last year when Kobe Altman spoke at his end of season availability, he talked about keeping the core four together. I didn't believe him. I rolled my eyes. I thought, there's no way he's doing that. He's saying that to protect trade value potentially for Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland, because Donovan Mitchell was not getting traded, and you knew Evan Mobley, of course, was not getting traded. So when we talk about potentially breaking up the core four, we're talking about Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland, because the other two guys are not going to get dealt. I think those are the two untouchables on the Cavs roster. But the way I look at this is, well, what needs to change about the Cavs? It's clear this was not good enough. The Cavs don't think it was good enough. Nobody should think this was good enough. And I don't think to give, proper credit, I don't think anyone thinks this is good enough. I don't think anyone is happy with the way that this year turned out for the Cavs ultimately, because it is a year that was always going to be judged on postseason success. Mostly next year, that's going to get ratcheted up tenfold. But can the core four deliver a championship? I think that is the question that Kobe Altman needs to be asking himself, will be asked whenever he speaks with the media, which might be today. I don't know. I'm recording this as of Thursday afternoon. I don't have information on when he is going to address the media, but I do believe he will at some point soon. And I think that is kind of the biggest question of this offseason, because if you look around this Cavs team, well, what needs to be different? Do they need to be better offensively? And yeah, but they were second best offense of all time in the regular season, and they didn't make shots in the postseason. That, is that something that needs to change roster wise, or is that just a little bit of bad luck? I tend to think that the lack of shooting in the playoffs was not because the Cavs suddenly turned into bad shooters. I think there was a little bit of bad luck there. Do they need to be better defensively? I do think so. I think they underachieved on that end of the floor for most of this year. But that is something that, how much does the roster need to change as far as that goes? Because you look at this roster on paper, sure, Darius Garland's not a good defender. I thought Donovan Mitchell this year was an average defender, which is pretty good for him. Evan Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year. Max Strus is good. Dean Wade is good. DeAndre Hunter is good. Isaac Okoro is good. Jarrett Allen is very good. Like, I can just name a lot of really good defenders, and they still underachieved on that end of the floor. Kenny Atkinson did not have a good series against Rick Carlisle on the Indiana Pacers, but I still think he is a very, very good coach. Thought he deserved to win Coach of the Year. And obviously, you're not making a change there, and you shouldn't be thinking about making a change there if you're the Cavs. But I can say all of these things and know, well, something has to change. I don't think that running it back as is the answer. Now, is running back the role players the answer? Probably not. Is running back the core four again the answer? Probably not. That's kind of where I've gotten to with this. And I think there are a number of reasons why that this group should have played its last game together. And the biggest one, of course, is, well, they failed. And they've now had 3 postseasons together, and they've won 11 games. And that is not good enough. And I'm not saying that they should have won the title last year or, their first year together, but I do think that first year, they should have been more successful than they were. The lights were too bright. That's what Jarrett Allen told us after the Cavs lost to the Knicks. And that is a quote that obviously has followed him around. Part of it is because he said it, he brought it upon himself, and I get that. Part of the time, I feel like it's been a little unfair. But it's hard to look at this and say, you know what, Jarrett Allen really rose to the occasion. Last year he was injured, and I'm not going to hold that against him. He could not play through a very, very painful injury that I think could have gotten a lot worse had he played. I don't hold that against him. I don't think anyone should hold that against him. I think some of the things that were said by people who are no longer with the organization, JB Bickerstaff on the radio, those comments, Marcus Morris, the comments he made, I thought those were out of line because I think Jarrett was playing through a lot, and I don't think the Cavs did him any favors by listing him as questionable for every game when he was not going to play. And I think that probably hurt his reputation a little bit. Now, built it back up. He played in every single game the Cavs played this year, all, I believe, 91 of them, right? But he didn't rise to the occasion in the playoffs. I thought against Orlando last year, in a few of those games before he got hurt, he was fine. He's good. But the Cavs needed him to rise to the occasion. We can talk about playoff risers and guys that maybe are playoff fallers, and Donovan Mitchell, no question, playoff riser. I don't know how you can watch that guy play in the postseason and think this dude does not rise to the occasion. I think he gets better. The bigger the game gets, I think he gets better. I think he's willing to do whatever it takes to will his team to where it wants to go. Now, that wasn't good enough in this series, but I don't put that all on him. I don't put much of that on him. Playing through what he was playing through, still producing in the way that he was. I mean, he only scored, 12 points in game 4 and still averaged 35 points a game in a 5-game series. Like, you have to be great in a sample size that short. The other 4 games have to be so good in terms of scoring to offset a 12-point performance. I don't know how you could call him anything other than a playoff riser. As I mentioned earlier, with Darius Garland, I am willing to say, okay, he was hurt this year. The first 2 games he played against Miami, I thought he was good. I thought he played well. He could not move against the Pacers. Like, it is hard for me. And if you want to have a conversation about his durability, I think that's a different conversation. I think that's a more fair conversation. But it's hard for me to put the results of this and what he looked like on the floor. It's hard for me to hold that against him because he very, very clearly was not himself. Very clearly could not move the way that we expect Darius Garland to move. So I think the jury is still out on him. I think Evan Mobley can be a playoff riser. I don't know that we've seen enough. I think the ankle was bothering him near the end of this series still. I thought he had some really good moments, though. If you look at what he did, I thought game 3, Donovan was the best player on the floor in that game, but Evan Mobley was second, and he was not very far behind Donovan. Like what he was able to do on both ends of the floor, I think very, very impressive. I'm not ready to sit here and call him a playoff riser yet, but he's had some pretty good playoff games in the 3 postseasons he's been in. And I think part of the reason why maybe he wasn't better was the lack of opportunity. I think that you can put that at his feet. You can put that at Kenny Atkinson's feet. I think you can put at Donovan Mitchell's feet, Darius Garland's feet, Ty Jerome's feet, the guys handling the basketball. I don't think that's all on Evan. I think it's part of it on Evan, but I don't think it's all on Evan. I'm not ready to call him a playoff riser, but I'm not ready to say that he doesn't rise to the occasion either. I think that we need to see probably at least one more postseason from him in these high leverage games to know for sure. But then I get to Jarrett Allen. And I do think at this point, and I like Jarrett, I think he's a really good player. But we talk about guys that are 82 game players and guys that are 16 game players. I think Jarrett Allen at this point, I think he's an 82 game player. He's a very helpful player. He's a very useful player. He is somebody that is going to show up night in and night out and be consistent, be good, play near an all-star level. He's a guy you want on your team. But I don't think he's a guy you want on your team when you're trying to win a championship. Because he was awesome. For the 82 games he played in the regular season, he was awesome. He was great. Did a lot of really good things for this team. I just don't know that he's a guy that you want playing in the 16 games you need to win a title. Because in this series against the Pacers, I didn't think he showed up. Against Miami, I can't even sit here and say Miami is good enough to judge stuff on that. Like, and I know what I said about Darius Garland's first 2 games, but I don't know that I can sit here and say, yeah, you know, the stuff they did against Miami was really good. That should be encouraging. No, like Miami was 37-45. They should not have been anywhere near the postseason. The Cavs faced a team that should have been picking like 9th in the draft. And that stuff, I think, just has to matter in this conversation. I think that the Cavs this offseason, they need to take a deep look internally. And this is more of a front office thing, not necessarily a player's thing. But I think internally, they need to take a look. Who's a playoff riser and who's not? And I think the answer to that question tells you who should be back from the core 4. That's, I think, one of the more difficult things to look at as the reality of the situation. But I think that's where we're at with the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. So things do need to change. What needs to change on the basketball floor? More importantly, what needs to change in terms of the mindset of the Cavs? We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. There is nothing like the NBA playoffs, right? We love playoff basketball when it arrives. It's almost as if it's a different sport than the rest of the regular season. That is an issue for the Cavs, and that means basketball season at its peak. The playoffs, they're here. They're not just heating up, they are here. We've got conference finals starting soon. Now is the time to put your sports knowledge to work with Prize Picks, the top platform for daily fantasy sports. Prize Picks makes it easy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, other things, you've got a shot to win up to 200,000 times your entry. Maybe when the conference finals start, you'll be looking at Anthony Edwards to score more than 25 points in a game, or maybe, depending on who gets out of that other series, you'll be looking at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to score more than 25 points in a game. The app takes less than 60 seconds to use, and you can mix and match basketball players with other sports like baseball or even esports in the same lineup. When you hit your picks, the payout hits fast, sometimes as little as 15 minutes. Plus, Tuesday, so keep this in mind for next week, because right now it's Friday, so Tuesday, they're even better with Taco Tuesday, where player projections are discounted up to 25% off for even more value. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's show Also brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. And at Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes, this is easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions, they'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most out of every hard working minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier takes the lead. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That is easierwithepicor.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review, friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. I don't think much needs to change about who the Cavaliers are in terms of their basketball skill set. They've got everything you could want. They've got dynamic guards. They've got a great big. I think they've got some really talented wings, even if those guys aren't star players. You look up and down this roster, and I think this is part of the thing that should make this season so frustrating for Cavs fans. You look up and down this roster, how many holes are there? Well, you've got 2 all-star guards. You've got guys on the wing in Max Strus, who I think is a really good role player. DeAndre Hunter, who I think is a really good role player. Dean Wade, who maybe not as good of a role player as he should be in theory. Isaac Okoro, very good defender. Sam Merrill, very good shooter, underrated defender. You've got Ty Jerome as a backup point guard. You've got Evan Mobley. You've got Jarrett Allen. You've got a lot of really great things. You have a lot of great pieces. But one of the things that stood out to me about the way the Pacers played in this series, and I mentioned this on one of the instant reaction podcasts I did with Tony East, but I thought the Pacers were not as talented as the Cavs. Even after the Cavs losing in 5 games, I think the Cavs are a more talented basketball team. The Pacers were healthier, which matters a lot. I'm not going to make excuses for the Cavs. They should not be making excuses for themselves, but the health thing does matter. And the Pacers were a team who I think the sum of what they are was greater than their individual parts. I thought that the way they complemented each other in terms of their skill sets was perfect. They have all taken on that image of Tyrese Halliburton, and they had a toughness level that the Cavs didn't quite have. And this was a big topic of conversation at exit interviews earlier this week. When asked about what needs to change, a lot of guys said, we need to be tougher. They're not talking about, they need to go punch people like Benedict Mathurin did. They need to have more mental fortitude. I do think they need to be physically tougher. Not saying that the injuries that kept certain guys out shouldn't have kept them out. But I do think there's a level of physical toughness that this Cavs team doesn't have. I don't think that, and I sort of laughed this off when it happened, but I don't think anyone in the NBA is scared of the Cavs. I don't think they view the Cavs as intimidating. Now, do you need to be intimidating to win a title? I don't think so. I think that you can win a title if you just make a lot of shots. Like, I don't think the Boston Celtics are an intimidating group of basketball players. I think that they're a really good group of basketball players, but they're not intimidating. They're very, very good, but they're not intimidating. I think the Cavs do probably need to grow that toughness. I think if I'm looking at the number one area where this team needs to improve, and this is a tricky thing because it's not a basketball skill. They don't need to get better shooting. They don't need to get more explosive guards. They need to get tougher. Now, the question that arises from that is, can toughness be taught? Can Kenny Atkinson teach this group of guys to be tough? I don't know. And that's not I don't know if Kenny Atkinson is capable of this. I don't know if it's something that can be taught. I think more accurately, it might be something that can be learned. So the question I will have that will not be able to be answered for the next 365-ish days, maybe a little bit less than that. But the question that I need to see answered is, did this group learn, or whoever is back from this team next year, did they learn toughness from this series? Did they find a way to be tougher because they went through this experience? We're not going to have that answer for a while. And I do think that there are guys who their toughness should not be questioned. I don't think anybody should have any questions about the toughness of Donovan Mitchell. I don't. I think he has stepped up and proven that. I don't think there should be any issues with that. I think Max Strus, pretty tough. I do think so. Now, he didn't play well in game 5. He shot the ball very, very poorly, but I think he's tough. He is a guy that I would want on my team if I'm building one. I think DeAndre Hunter, I think he's tough. The way that you saw him respond to what Benedict Mathurin did to him, I think that DeAndre Hunter is tough. I would want DeAndre Hunter on my basketball team. Darius Garland, I think, is playing through a lot of stuff. I don't know that I'm ready to call him as tough as those other guys, but I'm not ready to call him not tough either. I think Evan Mobley is probably in the same basket as Darius Garland there. I'm not ready to call him a tough guy like Donovan Mitchell or Max Strus, but I'm not ready to say that he's not tough. I think Isaac Okoro is tough. I think I would put him in that category. But you go up and down this roster, I think there are other guys you can look at and say, you know what? I don't know if you're tough enough. I don't know. In fact, I don't think Jarrett Allen is tough enough. And I really like Jarrett. I think he's a really good player, but I think that he needs to be a tougher basketball player if he's going to be on a championship team in the role that he has. I do not think, especially at that position, that is the position on the floor where I think toughness matters more than any other spot. And I don't think he has it. Can he learn it? I don't know. I don't. If he doesn't learn it from this, I don't think he ever will. Now, is that a gamble that the Cavs want to make? Do they want to say, yeah, we're going to bet that you learn this from this situation, from this experience and be better for it? Maybe he will. I don't know if the Cavs can afford to take that gamble. Is Ty Jerome tough enough? I like to think so, but he played so poorly in this series that maybe things started to snowball for him mentally. And again, I like Ty. I think Ty's a great presence in that locker room. I think Ty had an excellent season, but I have questions about it. Is Dean Wade tough enough? I don't know. I think that there are a lot of guys that you can look at the rotation for the Cavs and say, you know what, I think you need to be tougher. And if you're saying that about so many guys, it makes me wonder, well, how many of these guys are 16-game players versus how many of these guys who most of them had terrific regular seasons, how many of these guys are 82-game players? That is one of the questions that Kobe Altman is going to have to be dealing with pretty frequently between now and whenever he can start to make moves this summer. Because as I said on yesterday's show, there's a lot of pressure on Kobe Altman to get this right. So just from a 35,000 foot view, what does he need to do this summer? We're going to start to dive into that a little bit right here on Locked on Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters. I was there for those things, the fans losing their minds. I was there for all of that. It's a kind of atmosphere you must experience live. It is a great thing to experience, I will say. And the matchups this year have been delivering, even if they haven't delivered for the Cavs. If you want in, maybe you want to go to a conference finals game in Indianapolis because you're not going to get to see one in Cleveland. Game Time is the way to get in. They make it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games, and prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off. Plus, with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. You can see your exact view of the seat before you buy. There's no surprises. Plus, you won't have to be paying more than the number you see. What you see is what you get with Game Time. That is one of the best things about this. Plus, if you really want to be miserable, I believe that seats for a certain football team are on sale. The schedule was released. You know when and where. If you want to be miserable and go watch that team, Game Time will get you in the door at the Factory of Sadness. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON for $20 off that first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. What does Kobe Altman need to do this summer to ensure that the Cavs are a championship caliber team next spring? I think it's a lot of what I've outlined in this episode. I think that the Cavs need to be a tougher team. Now, how do you define toughness is a question for him that I would be very interested in getting the answer to. But I think that this group probably needs to add a little bit more of a veteran presence. And I think that Tristan Thompson has done a great job in this locker room. I think Tristan Thompson is very well respected and liked by the guys in that locker room. I know he is very, very respected by the coaching staff. So I wonder, okay, well, how much does that matter from a guy who doesn't play? And that is a question that I don't know the answer to. But I do think having somebody maybe that doesn't have the veteran authority or the history in Cleveland, but does bring a toughness that is in the rotation, is probably something the Cavs need. Like, I think Javonte Green, probably somebody who brings that toughness. Now, the issue is I just don't think Javonte Green was a good enough shooter to be on the floor for the Cavs. So I kind of look at this as, okay, well, can you find somebody like that who is a good shooter that can fit in offensively? Because that's just where I think that's why Javonte didn't play. Can you find somebody like that can do this, that can bring that toughness and perform and be a 16-game player? Those guys are hard to find. And that's why Kobe Altman's job this summer is not one that anybody should envy, because the Cavs are very expensive. They're going to be constricted. But they've got a chance here. And I think they need to find more toughness. I know they need to find more toughness. And they are good to tell you that they need to find more toughness. And maybe that is, just as I talked about on yesterday's show about the failure of the season and the embarrassment and like being something you have to own, organizationally, I think they have to own being more tough. They have to find a way to get more tough. I don't think that happens by running this back. I think that this happens by probably changing out some pieces, finding a little bit more toughness, finding guys that fit the mold, not only in terms of what needs to happen on the floor, but what needs to happen when nobody's watching. I think that's where the Cavs are at this offseason. And it will be a very, very interesting one to follow. And I think one of the more pivotal off seasons that this Cleveland Cavaliers group will have. As I mentioned at the end of yesterday's show, I am going to do a mailbag episode Monday and potentially Tuesday as well, depending on how many questions I get. So if you have mailbag questions, drop them in the comments on YouTube. You can send them my way on social media, or you can email them to me. I have set up an email. It is locavsmailbag@gmail.com. So LOCAVSMAILBAG@gmail.com. If you have questions there, you can send them that way. Or I did put a post up on the Cavs subreddit taking comments there for questions as well. But I would like to do a mailbag episode, maybe 2, maybe even 3, depending on how good the questions are early next week, just to sort of tie a bow on the season that was and start to look ahead to the season and the off season. That certainly will be a very pivotal one for this organization. So thank you as we get out of here for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Drop those mailbag questions, and I'll be back next week with more Locked On Cavs.